Bathing. Most people in the American West went days or weeks without full baths because clean water and heat were hard to get. On homesteads, every bath required hauling buckets from a well or creek and heating them over a stove, so bathing ranked low against work and cooking. Families reused the same small tub in order, adults first, children last, to conserve water and fuel. In towns, bathhouses existed, but water cost money, fuel was limited, and multiple customers often used the same tub unless they paid for a fresh fill. Mining camps rationed water for drinking and cooking, leaving little for washing. Cold winters froze pumps and made bathing risky in unheated rooms. Most baths were quick basin wipes of face, armpits, and hands. Toilets. Toilets in the Wild West were almost always outhouses, simple wooden shacks built over a pit dug into the ground. These pits quickly filled, especially in towns with many residents, and often leaked waste into soil and nearby water sources. The smell was constant, and flies spread germs from waste to food. At night, or in bad weather, people used chamber pots indoors, which were ceramic or metal bowls kept under the bed. In the morning, contents were dumped into the street, into rivers, or into open pits, adding to the stench. Larger towns sometimes had cesspool collectors, but most areas had no organized sewage system, leaving waste management up to each household or business. Dust. Dust was a constant problem in the Wild West, coating homes, streets, and clothing. Dirt roads, unpaved paths, and wind-blown soil filled the air with fine particles that settled on everything. Inside homes and saloons, dust mixed with soot from wood stoves, smoke from fires, and debris from animal hair, creating layers of grime on floors, tables, and utensils. People carried dust on their boots and clothing, spreading it from streets into living and dining areas. Dust also transported germs and bacteria from waste, rotting food, and animal droppings, making eating or sleeping a vector for disease. In towns, constant sweeping did little to remove it, and the fine particles infiltrated lungs, contributing to respiratory illnesses. Soap. Soap in the Wild West was a scarce and valuable commodity, often homemade from animal fat and lye, or imported in small, expensive bars. Many frontier families used it sparingly, reserving it for hand washing or occasional laundry rather than full-body baths. Commercial soaps contained harsh chemicals, which could irritate skin, so people sometimes avoided frequent use altogether. Without regular soap, oils, sweat, dirt, and bacteria accumulated on skin and clothing, creating persistent odors and increasing the risk of infections. In towns, public washhouses provided soap, but it was usually communal and heavily used, meaning the water and soap could already be contaminated. Limited soap availability contributed significantly to the widespread poor hygiene of the era. Spitting. Chewing tobacco was extremely common in the Wild West, and spitting was constant in saloons, gambling halls, and even public buildings. To manage this, saloons placed spittoons, metal pots designed to catch spit, around the room. Floors were often littered with tobacco juice because not everyone aimed well or bothered to use them. Spittoons themselves rarely got cleaned thoroughly, turning into foul-smelling pools of spit. In crowded saloons, the stench mixed with alcohol, smoke, and body odor. On dusty streets, men spat directly onto the ground, spreading bacteria into dry air that people breathed. Diseases like tuberculosis spread easily through droplets, yet spitting remained socially accepted and went largely unchecked. Laundry. In the Wild West, most people wore the same clothes for weeks without washing them. Water was too scarce and soap too expensive to waste on laundry. Washing meant hauling water, heating it, scrubbing by hand on a washboard, and drying in the open air, which was time-consuming and exhausting. As a result, shirts stiffened with sweat, dirt, and grease, while trousers absorbed dust from endless trail rides or mining work. Underclothes, if worn, were often unchanged for long stretches, leading to lice and skin infections. Many people simply brushed off surface dirt or shook out garments to freshen them. Laundresses, often immigrants or widows, made a living cleaning clothes for others, but even their work was limited by scarce water and heavy labor. Dental. Dentistry in the Wild West was nearly non-existent, and most people lived with severe tooth decay. Regular brushing was rare because toothbrushes were expensive imports, and toothpaste was limited to homemade powders of salt, chalk, or crushed charcoal. Sugar from canned goods and hard candy grew popular, which worsened cavities. When a toothache became unbearable, the only solution was extraction, often performed by a barber, blacksmith, or anyone with pliers rather than a trained dentist. These crude removals risked infection and bleeding, with no painkillers except alcohol or opium. Dentures, if available, were made from animal teeth or ivory, costly luxuries few could afford. As a result, rotting teeth, foul breath, and visible gum disease were common throughout frontier communities. Food. Food in the Wild West was often stored and prepared in conditions that invited contamination. Without refrigeration, meat spoiled quickly, especially in hot summers, and people relied on salting, smoking, or drying to preserve it. Even then, mold and maggots developed, yet food was still eaten rather than wasted. Kitchens and saloons lacked screens on windows, so flies swarmed around cooking pots, carrying germs from waste piles and outhouses. Dust from unpaved streets settled onto uncovered dishes, adding grit to meals. Drinking water from wells, rivers, or barrels was rarely filtered, and it often contained bacteria from human and animal waste. Diarrhea, food poisoning, and intestinal parasites were common, but little was understood about their connection to contaminated food. Bedbugs. Personal grooming in the Wild West was minimal, and infestations of lice, fleas, and bedbugs were widespread. People bathed infrequently, and hair was rarely washed, giving lice an easy environment to thrive. Hats were worn daily and rarely cleaned, trapping sweat, oils, and insects inside. In boarding houses, blankets and mattresses were shared among travelers, spreading bedbugs from one guest to the next. Fleas were also common, carried by dogs, horses, and other animals that lived in close quarters with humans. Night combs and kerosene washes were sometimes used against lice, but infestations usually lingered. Farmers and cowhands working long days often accepted vermin as part of life, scratching constantly and living with irritated skin and sores. Medical tools. Medical hygiene in the Wild West was extremely poor. Doctors, when available, often reused tools such as scalpels, saws, and needles without sterilizing them. Knowledge of germs was limited, and hand washing before surgery was rare. Instruments were wiped on cloths or rinsed in dirty water, spreading bacteria from one patient to another. Bullet extractions and amputations were performed in makeshift environments like cabins or tents, where dust, flies, and unclean hands introduced further infection. Bandages were reused until they fell apart, and disinfectants such as carbolic acid were not widely adopted. Many patients died not from injuries themselves, but from sepsis, gangrene, or blood poisoning. Survival often depended more on luck and the body's strength than on medical care. Waste. Wild West towns lacked proper sanitation systems, so streets became dumping grounds for every kind of waste. Residents tossed chamber pot contents, leftover food, and animal manure directly into the road. Horses, mules, and oxen left piles of droppings daily, which mixed with mud and dust, creating a foul-smelling sludge. In dry weather, winds carried the dust, laden with bacteria, into homes, saloons, and lungs. Stray dogs and pigs rummaged through garbage piles, spreading disease further. Some towns appointed night soil men to haul waste away, but this was inconsistent and limited to larger settlements. Most frontier communities lived with streets that stank year-round, turning into breeding grounds for flies, rats, and constant illness. Barbershop. Barbershops were common gathering spots in frontier towns, but hygiene practices inside were poor. Razors, scissors, and combs were used on multiple customers without proper cleaning. A straight razor might shave dozens of men in a day, carrying cuts, skin infections, and bloodborne diseases from one face to another. Disinfectants like alcohol or boiling water were rarely applied between uses. Towels were reused repeatedly, often damp and harboring bacteria. Hair clippings mixed with dust and dirt covered the floors, while the smell of sweat and tobacco filled the air. Despite this, barbershops thrived, doubling as dentists or surgeons, further increasing the risks of infection through shared tools and unsanitary practices. Animals. Animals were commonly kept inside homes or stables attached to living areas, which drastically reduced hygiene. Cows, pigs, chickens, and dogs roamed near cooking and sleeping spaces, spreading hair, dander, and fecal matter. Floors were often dirt or rough wood, making it easy for animal waste to mix with human food preparation areas. Flies, attracted to both human and animal waste, transmitted bacteria onto surfaces and dishes. Even pets sleeping on beds or furniture carried fleas and lice directly to humans. Water used for washing or cooking could easily be contaminated by runoff from stables or animal pens. This close proximity between humans and animals amplified the risk of diseases like typhoid, cholera, and parasitic infection. Drinking. Saloons in the Wild West were the main hubs for alcohol consumption and casual conversation. They served whiskey, beer, and occasionally wine, often in rough conditions with little quality control. Whiskey was sometimes cut with water or even harmful additives like tobacco juice to stretch supply. Patrons gathered not just to drink but to exchange local news, discuss cattle drives, or strike business deals. The bar counter was usually a long plank of wood, sometimes with a brass rail, and bartenders worked quickly to keep glasses full. Drinking could start early in the day and continue late into the night. Gambling. Gambling was one of the biggest moneymakers for saloons, often running all day and night. Popular games included faro, poker, blackjack, craps, and roulette. Faro was especially widespread because it was fast-paced and easy to learn. Card tables were set up in the main room or in side areas, with professional gamblers, sometimes hired by the saloon, ready to take on newcomers. Cheating was common, using marked cards, stacked decks, or sleight of hand. Dealers often carried pistols to deter disputes, and violent arguments over losses were not rare. High-stakes games could change a player's fortune in a single evening. Gunfights. Saloons were frequent hotspots for violence, often sparked by gambling disputes, unpaid debts, or excessive drinking. Fistfights could break out over a single insult, while more serious altercations escalated into knife fights or gunfights. Because many patrons carried revolvers, tensions could turn deadly in seconds. Some saloons posted signs requiring guns to be checked at the door, but enforcement was inconsistent. Professional gunfighters and local outlaws sometimes used saloons as meeting spots, which increased the risk of trouble. Lawmen might step in to restore order, but by the time they arrived, the damage, often fatal, was usually already done. Entertainment. Saloons frequently doubled as entertainment venues, offering live music, dancing, and variety acts to keep patrons spending money. Pianists or small bands played popular tunes, while singers or can-can dancers performed on small stages. In larger towns, saloons might host traveling theater groups, magic acts, or comedy routines. Performers were often hired to encourage guests to buy more drinks, with song and dance girls mingling between acts to chat with customers. Some establishments offered private booths or back rooms for more discreet entertainment. The constant noise of music, laughter, and clinking glasses was part of the saloon's attraction. Prostitution. Many Wild West saloons operated in close connection with prostitution, either in upstairs rooms or in separate buildings out back. Women known as soiled doves, or ladies of the evening, worked under a madam's supervision, paying a share of their earnings to the saloon owner. Some saloons employed painted ladies, who acted as both entertainers and sex workers, mingling with patrons to entice business. Transactions were often arranged subtly during conversations at the bar. While some women worked voluntarily, many were driven by poverty or coercion. Law enforcement largely ignored the trade, provided it remained discreet and didn't cause public disturbances. Business deals. Saloons often functioned as informal business centers, especially in frontier towns with few official institutions. Cattle ranchers, miners, and traders met at saloon tables to negotiate contracts, arrange cattle drives, or purchase supplies. Some saloon owners acted as unofficial bankers, holding patrons' money for safekeeping or extending credit for drinks and gambling. Gold dust and nuggets were sometimes exchanged directly across the bar, with scales kept on hand for weighing. Because these deals relied heavily on trust, disputes over unpaid debts or broken agreements were common, and many were settled right there, in public, often under tense circumstances. Political meetings. Saloons were key gathering spots for local politics, serving as unofficial town halls where candidates gave speeches and debated opponents. Political operatives used them to spread campaign messages, distribute flyers, and recruit supporters. Elections were often influenced inside these establishments, with free drinks offered to secure votes. In some towns, saloon owners themselves became political power brokers, using their wealth and connections to sway decisions on law enforcement, taxation, or business licensing. Because saloons attracted a broad cross-section of the population, ranchers, miners, merchants, they were ideal for rallying public opinion and forging alliances that shaped local governance. Illegal activities. Many saloons operated at the edge of legality, often engaging in or facilitating illegal activities beyond gambling and prostitution. Some sold bootleg alcohol, especially during local prohibition attempts or dry spells. Others acted as fronts for smuggling goods, fencing stolen property, or hosting underground poker games with high stakes. Corruption was common, with saloon owners bribing local law enforcement to overlook violations or to warn them of impending raids. These arrangements allowed saloons to thrive despite their illicit undertakings, while patrons frequently ignored the risks due to the limited social and recreational options available in frontier towns. Stunts. Many saloons encouraged patrons to stay longer and spend more through drinking contests and stunts. These could include timed whiskey drinking races, dares to drink strong house brews, or wagers on who could consume the most beer without stopping. Some bartenders created signature knockout drinks, potent mixes intended to impress or incapacitate. Stunts weren't limited to drinking. Feats like shooting targets inside the saloon or performing tricks while intoxicated also drew attention. Such events often blurred the line between entertainment and recklessness, with injuries or property damage being common outcomes. Winners sometimes earned free drinks or public bragging rights. The bartender. Bartenders in Wild West saloons were more than drink servers. They were central figures managing multiple roles simultaneously. They poured drinks swiftly, maintained order, mediated disputes, and often acted as informal bankers or credit keepers for regular customers. Bartenders needed to recognize patrons, remember debts, and sometimes spot cheats at the gambling tables. Their presence was critical for preventing theft and violence, and many carried weapons for protection. Skilled bartenders also mixed house special cocktails, balancing flavors to mask poor quality alcohol, thereby enhancing the saloon's reputation and profitability. Music machines. By the late 19th century, some saloons began installing coin-operated music machines, early predecessors to jukeboxes, which played popular songs when a coin was inserted. These devices added a modern novelty and reduced the need for live musicians during slow hours. Other mechanical amusements included pool tables, bagatelle boards, and early slot machines. Patrons could pass the time with these games while drinking, and owners profited from the extra spending. The presence of such machines also helped saloons compete with rival establishments, offering a wider variety of entertainment beyond gambling and live acts, appealing to both locals and travelers. Food and drink. While primarily focused on alcohol, many saloons also served food to attract and retain customers. Typical offerings included simple, hearty fare like beef stew, salted pork, beans, biscuits, and occasionally freshly baked pies. Meals were often cooked in a back kitchen or by an on-site cook. Food helped balance the strong drinks and extended patrons' visits. Some saloons became known for their signature dishes, drawing locals and travelers alike. Food service was usually informal, with meals eaten at shared tables or directly at the bar. Prices were kept low to encourage frequent visits, though quality varied widely depending on the establishment and location. Towels and spittoons. Many early Wild West saloons surprisingly lacked bar stools or chairs at the counter, requiring patrons to stand while drinking and socializing. This standing room only setup encouraged quicker turnover and more active engagement among customers. However, saloons were equipped with plentiful towels and spittoons to maintain hygiene in an era when chewing tobacco was common. Patrons frequently spat tobacco juice into large spittoons placed around the room, which helped keep floors cleaner. Towels were used by bartenders to wipe counters and glasses, and sometimes by customers to clean their hands or faces, reflecting the rough but practical sanitation standards of the time. Saloon layout and design. Wild West saloons were typically designed with a long bar running along one wall, creating an open main room where patrons gathered. The layout often included a raised platform behind the bar for bartenders and space for card tables and chairs scattered throughout. Separate rooms or partitions sometimes housed gambling, private meetings, or entertainment like dance floors. Back rooms or upstairs areas were used for lodging, prostitution, or storage. Large windows and swinging doors were common, allowing light and air inside while enabling quick exits during fights. The design balanced practical needs, like crowd flow and security, with the social functions of the saloon. Credit systems and tab keeping. Many saloon patrons did not pay cash immediately, but ran tabs, an informal credit system managed by bartenders or owners. Regular customers, such as ranchers or miners, often trusted the saloon to keep a running balance of drinks and food consumed. At the end of a week or a drive, they would settle their debts in cash or goods, like cattle or ore. This system relied heavily on personal trust and reputation. However, it also led to disputes when debts went unpaid or customers disappeared. Some saloons used handwritten ledgers or chalkboards to record tabs, while others memorized accounts. Jesse James. Jesse James, once a Confederate guerrilla fighter during the Civil War, turned to crime after the conflict ended. With his brother Frank, he formed the James Younger Gang, targeting banks, stagecoaches, and trains across the Midwest. Their robberies were not simply theft, they were executed with calculated intimidation. James often entered banks armed, ordering civilians to lie on the floor at gunpoint while his gang emptied safes. In train raids, passengers were sometimes beaten for resisting, and railway guards were shot if they attempted to intervene. His reputation for cold efficiency made him one of the most feared men in the West. Butch Cassidy. Butch Cassidy, leader of the Wild Bunch Gang, specialized in meticulously planned robberies of banks and trains during the 1890s. While less impulsive than other outlaws, his operations were marked by force and intimidation. During the 1896 Montpellier bank robbery, armed gang members took control of the streets, forcing townspeople indoors while others emptied the vault. In train heists, guards were held at gunpoint and engineers were threatened with death if they resisted. Cassidy ensured quick escapes by pre-staging fresh horses along the route, frustrating lawmen for years. His coordination skills turned robberies into large-scale operations with ruthless precision. Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid, born Henry McCarty, became infamous for his role in the Lincoln County War in New Mexico during the late 1870s. Known for his quick draw and deadly aim, he participated in numerous shootouts, often killing rivals without hesitation. He was involved in the ambush and execution-style killing of Sheriff William Brady, an act of revenge tied to the conflict's violent feuds. Billy escaped from jail multiple times, killing deputies in the process. Despite his young age, reportedly 21 at his death, he claimed to have killed 21 men, one for each year of his life, earning a lasting reputation for ruthlessness. John Wesley Hardin. John Wesley Hardin was one of the deadliest gunfighters of the American West, credited with killing over 40 men. His violence often erupted over minor disputes. He once shot a man for snoring too loudly in a hotel. Hardin killed lawmen, Union soldiers, and civilians, showing little regard for human life. During his years on the run, he ambushed pursuing sheriffs and marshals, often shooting them in the back. He was known to use surprise attacks, giving victims no chance to defend themselves. His unpredictable temper and willingness to kill over trivial provocations made him feared across Texas and beyond. Bill Doolin. Bill Doolin led the Wild Bunch Gang in the 1890s, specializing in bank and train robberies across Oklahoma and Kansas. His gang was known for using violence to intimidate victims and escape law enforcement. Doolin personally participated in shootouts, often killing or wounding anyone who resisted. He coordinated raids with careful planning, pre-positioning horses and weapons for quick getaways. Doolin's willingness to use lethal force against lawmen and civilians alike made him one of the most feared outlaw leaders of the territory, with a reputation for ruthlessness that lasted even after his gang was dismantled. Sam Bass. Sam Bass specialized in robbing trains carrying large payroll shipments, often intended for miners or railway workers. His most famous heist was in 1877, when his gang intercepted a Union Pacific train in Nebraska and stole $60,000 in newly minted gold coins, a staggering sum at the time. Bass and his men were known for threatening crew members at gunpoint, forcing them to reveal hidden valuables or open secure compartments. In some robberies, passengers were ordered to surrender cash and jewelry under the watch of armed guards. His repeated strikes on payroll shipments disrupted businesses and spread fear across the rail lines. Johnny Ringo. Johnny Ringo, a notorious gunman of the Arizona Territory, was feared for his precision and cold-blooded demeanor. He was involved with the Cochise County Cowboys and participated in ambushes and murders of lawmen and rival factions. Ringo preferred planning attacks carefully, using intimidation and strategic positioning to gain the upper hand. In disputes, he often forced victims into deadly duels or executed them outright when resistance occurred. His reputation for carrying multiple pistols and readiness to shoot without hesitation made him a figure both respected and feared among outlaws and townsfolk alike. Clay Allison. Clay Allison was infamous for unpredictable and often unprovoked acts of violence. A former Confederate soldier, he developed a reputation as a gunman who killed over minor slights. He once shot a man in a saloon simply because he disliked the way the man looked at him. Allison was also involved in lynchings and extrajudicial killings, taking the law into his own hands and delivering brutal justice without trial. He reportedly decapitated one enemy and displayed the head as a warning. His readiness to escalate small disputes into deadly confrontations made him one of the most feared personalities of the frontier. Black Bart. Black Bart, born Charles Bowles, was known for robbing stagecoaches in California and Oregon during the 1870s and 1880s. Though he avoided direct violence more often than other outlaws, he threatened the lives of passengers and drivers to ensure compliance. His robberies involved brandishing pistols and issuing stern warnings, forcing victims to hand over valuables. On several occasions, he left behind poems mocking law enforcement, demonstrating both arrogance and psychological intimidation. While he rarely killed, his readiness to use firearms and his meticulous planning created an atmosphere of fear wherever he struck. The Dalton Gang. The Dalton Gang, active in the early 1890s, became notorious for combining robbery with sheer brutality. Their attacks targeted banks and trains across Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri, often escalating into deadly shootouts. Members were willing to fire indiscriminately, putting civilians and lawmen alike at risk. In Coffeyville, Kansas, their attempted simultaneous bank robberies ended in a violent massacre, leaving 4 gang members dead and several townspeople wounded. The Daltons' strategy relied on overwhelming force, intimidation, and the willingness to kill anyone who resisted. Their short but violent spree cemented their reputation as some of the most reckless and ruthless outlaws of the West. Wild Bill Hickok. Wild Bill Hickok was both a lawman and a feared gunslinger, known for his skill with revolvers and quick draw. He killed multiple men in shootouts, often during disputes over gambling, cattle, or personal insults. Hickok carried his pistols constantly, using them to enforce his version of justice when lawmen or rivals opposed him. He gained notoriety for maintaining calm under pressure and shooting with precision, making him both respected and feared. His willingness to kill quickly, even outside legal boundaries, cemented his place among the ruthless figures of the Wild West. Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday, a trained dentist turned notorious gunslinger, became infamous for his deadly skill with pistols during the Wild West era. Often accompanying Wyatt Earp, Holliday participated in shootouts and vigilante justice, showing little hesitation to kill in confrontations. He was involved in the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral, where he exchanged gunfire with members of the Clanton-McClory faction, demonstrating both precision and fearlessness. Beyond formal duels, Holliday reportedly killed in personal disputes and for intimidation, using his reputation and firearms to exert control over rivals. His combination of skill, illness-driven recklessness, and willingness to use lethal force made him a feared figure. Kid Curry. Kid Curry, also known as Harvey Logan, was a key member of Butch Cassidy's Wild Bunch. He gained a reputation for extreme violence and a quick temper, killing lawmen and civilians alike during robberies and personal disputes. Curry was involved in multiple train and bank heists, often executing ambushes and shootouts with deadly precision. His attacks were ruthless. Anyone who resisted faced immediate death. Curry's skill with firearms, combined with his unpredictable aggression, made him one of the most dangerous outlaws of his time, leaving terror in every town he passed through. Big Nose George. Big Nose George Parrott, active in the late 19th century, became infamous for his violent robberies and brutal reputation across Wyoming. He was involved in stagecoach robberies, often ambushing travelers and threatening them with death to steal valuables. George was known for his cold-blooded behavior and willingness to shoot anyone who resisted or could identify him later. His outlaw career ended when he was captured and hanged, but his notoriety persisted due to the gruesome posthumous treatment of his body, which was displayed for public shock. His crimes and violent methods made him one of the most feared figures in the Wyoming Territory. Bob Dalton. Bob Dalton, brother of the infamous Dalton Gang, was notorious for his short temper and willingness to kill during robberies. He participated in bank and train heists across Kansas and Oklahoma, often using extreme violence to control victims. Bob favored ambushes and shootouts, and he did not hesitate to fire at lawmen or civilians who resisted. His impulsive nature ultimately contributed to the gang's downfall, but during his criminal career, he helped instill fear across the Midwest. His actions cemented his reputation as one of the ruthless and reckless figures of the Wild West.